Hi everyone, I'm Yasha, and welcome to the third episode of Election Scoop. Today we'll be asking an interesting question. How are the votes we cast counted? Yes, the depressingly low 58% of people who go up to the booth physically cast ballots, but what happens after that? Well, if you've ever watched live election results, you'll notice that after the polls close in a certain state, it's a while before we actually get all the votes in from that state. Instead, you see a caption saying that for each state or county, a certain percent of the votes are in. This is because counting and reporting ballots is a long and very tedious process. As a matter of fact, in the most recent statewide election in Alabama, although the vote closed at 7 p.m. local time, it wasn't until 7:24 that we even got 1% of the vote in, and not until 9 p.m. that we were even able to predict a winner for the GOP. There are a lot of processes that we can use for counting ballots. Ballots can be on paper, via punch card, or completely electronic. And the way each of those are counted may be different for each of the 3,142 counties, or 174,252 precincts across the United States. The examples I'm providing today are just that, a sample, as they are often not exactly the same in Alaska as they are in Florida. Usually, on election day, you go to your polling place and cast your ballot. If it's a paper ballot, the ballot boxes are usually mailed off from the voter place to a designated central location, often a county courthouse or some other government building, and there they are counted. While the ballots are being counted, especially in larger counties, delegates from political parties often observe the counting to make sure a vote does not go in the wrong pile. If there is some confusion about who voted how, an election judge decides who gets the vote or whether the vote should even be counted at all. This is extremely important, as some races, such as a Vermont State House race in 2016, have been decided by just one vote, putting a huge burden of pressure on the election judge's decision. Voting on electronic systems is usually less tedious and faster to count, as the votes are displayed on a computer screen and counted from there. So after the votes have been counted at the central station, they have to be announced to the nation and the world. But because the individual states, not the U.S. federal government, control elections, officials in each county report their results either to a state official, usually the Secretary of State, or to individuals from the Associated Press who are actually there awaiting to report results back to headquarters. In larger counties with hundreds or even thousands of precincts, reporting results for the various precincts is usually updated every 15 minutes. In more rural counties, updates might only come every hour, but through this painstaking method, election results become known to the world. However, these are only the preliminary results. In the days after an election, the Secretary of State and/or a state board of canvassers certify the votes to make sure there were no voter irregularities or fraud, and that all outstanding contests and recalls are appropriately dealt with. For presidential elections, the electors meet in the state capitol and vote for the nominee they pledged to, although this is usually a formality with little to no defections from each party and candidate. So as you can see, the vote counting in the United States can be a very tedious process. In the example from Alabama I mentioned earlier, it was about 10 minutes before the first precinct reported its results. That precinct, that voting area, only had 6 people in it, so of course it was easier to count. It's a whole different ballgame for most other areas in the US. So in a nutshell, that is how votes are counted on election night. This isn't 100% the case, as I said before, and many people cast their ballots many different ways. In this episode, we didn't cover mail-in ballots or early voting, but for the vast majority watching results on TV, this is how those numbers pop up and refresh on the screen. So thanks for watching, and remember, don't forget to vote.